All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll look to council for direction to come back into our regular meeting. Councilor Diachuk. Secondly, Councilor Buckingham. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So I will look to the city manager via the CFO for the budget 2018.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. For your consideration, the 2018 operational budget and 2018 capital budget. Recommendations are that council approve the 2018 operating budget with a total operating expenditure of $79,625,894. The 2018 capital budget, which has total costs of $51,834,856, both of which have moved tables. And the council direct administration to bring the 2018 operating budget and the 2018 capital budgets forward for review upon receipt of the final mill rate calculation, eligible grants, and education requisitions from the province. The issue, of course, is to provide council with the 2018 operational budget, the 2018 capital budget for consideration and approval. The background, the 2018 operational budget and 2018 capital budget are being presented for council approval. Throughout the 2018 budget process, the city has revised the budget and has identified immediate and long-term priorities. The first draft of the 2018 budget was brought forward to the November 6, 2017 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting for review. The second and third drafts being reviewed November 20th and December 6th. Council has the ability to amend the operational or capital budget at any time during the budget year by resolution. Following approval of the provincial budget in the spring, with education requisitions, administration will bring forward the mill rate bylaw. The operating and capital budgets may be subject to review at that time if council requests. As for options, the council approves the operational budget and 2018 capital budget. This allows for a budget to be adopted prior to 2018 and projects operations to proceed. The council, second option, the council requests administration to bring back further information on the 2018 operational budget and 2018 capital budget. This would delay the approval of the 2018 operational budget, requiring an interim operating budget to be approved prior to December 31st, 2017. Council would be required to approve the 2018 capital budget prior to December 31st to ensure compliance with the Lloydminster Charter. As far as governance implications are concerned, the Lloydminster Charter states that council must adopt an operating budget for each individual year. Council may adopt an interim operating budget for part of the financial year. The charter also states that council must adopt a capital budget for each financial year, not providing the option of an interim budget. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that there's no confusion on this issue from the vote we had prior to our recess, 95% of everything that went into this budget I wholeheartedly agreed with, not even 95, 98%. There was a 2% that I disagreed with, so I don't want to confuse the issue. I'm most definitely in favor of this budget. There was just, small detail I disagreed on, but I totally support, the opinion of council on that. So, yeah, I'm definitely in favor of this 2018 operational capital budget. I think it points us into the right direction long term, and I think it's important that we do that. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Against the one, Councilor Diachuk.
One of the certainly comments made, I think, prior meeting was around the number of folks that were in arrears on taxation, good times and bad. And what I did have the opportunity to get back from Director Petty is that every year it's around 2% non-compliance. And in fact, when the economy was, correct me if I'm wrong, but the economy was very high. It was actually 2.9% non-compliance in terms of the taxation of the rates. So in spite of the changes in where the budget is, the points, the numbers of people that are in arrears really has moved marginally.
Well, the comment I wanted to share, and I think it's been said before, but I just want to make sure the taxpayers hear this, is the one difference between municipal and provincial and federal governments is we cannot run a deficit. So when we pass an operational budget, it has to be balanced, or a bit of a surplus, but we can't run an operational deficit. Capital, we can borrow money on a set amount of time, and we have parameters in that place. And I think previous councils, I'll give them credit, have kept us well in check on that, thank goodness. And left us with a little bit of room to work with the wastewater treatment plant if we need to move forward. But from the municipal government, we just have no choice but simply to adjust the facts on an annual basis to what we really can live with and what the community is willing to live with. Because we can't borrow money to operationally run. And that's one of the challenges that we face. We learned that very quickly here at this table. I understand it fully. It's just the realities of the day as a municipal government. I'm glad we're not able to, because I'm sure, as everyone would know, that it's always easier to give away money than it is to bring in money. So it is the budget. It is what the community, like I say, I haven't had anyone come up to me and say, please shut something down or shorten the length of time it operates. People enjoy the community that we have. It's a great community, but it does take money to fund to operate, and that's from the taxpayers as well as government grants and everything else. So I hope the taxpayers understand that we've worked as diligently as we can. We didn't answer everybody's wish. I know that just can't happen. So we'll take it from there. Appreciate the hard work the administration's laid out, and now we know where we can go. So any other comments from council at this time? If not, I will look for direction from council.
I'll make the motion, Your Worship.
Councilor Dunchak.
The council approved the 2018 operating budget with a total operating expenditure of $79,625,894 and the 2018 capital budget, which has a total cost of $51,834,856, and the council directed administration to bring the 2018 operating budget and the 2018 capital budget forward for review upon receipt of the final mill rate calculation, eligible grants and education requisitions from the provinces.
Second, Councilor Torres. Any further debate? Any questions about it? Councilor Becker. You have a comment?
Pardon me?
You have a comment, Council?
No?
Oh, okay. I'm ready to call for the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I didn't catch the second.
Oh, the seconder was Councilor.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And again, thank you to the administration. I know the finance team has worked extremely hard. Thank you very much for all your efforts, for the information presented. You've made milestones, so you've set the bar, so now you know where you gotta go next year again, but with the same group. Thank you so much to administration and finance. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the agenda. Or back to the agenda, I should say. We have, so good there. 8.4 is community sewer development services. Up to the city manager, to the executive manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, to City Manager. Before you today is a request for a decision from in regards to the Facility Corporation operational review. Just to provide some context into this, this item was discussed at December 4th Facilities Corporation Board meeting, and the recommendation was to bring this forward to council for consideration. The city is looking for council to approve funding requests from the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation to expense up to a maximum of $50,000 to conduct a full operational review of the corporation. The Facilities Corporation is requesting to conduct a full operational review of the corporation to develop optimal operating models and maximize operating efficiencies. In 2010, an operating review of Lloydminster Communiplex, as it was named at the time, was conducted. The review discussed the structure and operation of the Communiplex and how it was affecting operations. The recommendations of the 2010 review was to dissolve the board of directors of the Golf and Curling Club and create a management structure in which the city of Lloydminster would oversee the nonprofit board. This led to the creation of the Facilities Corporation. In 2013, the Facilities Corporation Board started the process to conduct an operational review, but this process was not completed. The report had been forwarded to council for review previously. It was a report that got to a preliminary process, and then the contract was terminated. The current Facilities Corporation Board is interested in conducting an operational review. The review will include operational model review, governance review, member service or service levels, staffing ratio to meet the service levels, as well as planning and budgeting practices. Administration has reached out to multiple consultants within the recreational field to get an estimate on the cost to complete this operational review. The average estimated cost was roughly $50,000, which included GST. Should council approve funding for this initiative, the Facilities Corporation will secure it resolved through an invite tender process as per the city's purchasing policy. I just want to note that this is an unbudgeted item in our 2017 operating budget, and that the funding for this will come from efficiencies within the city's operating budget in 2017. I'll pass it back to your worship for any questions.
Thank you, Executive Manager Stang. Councilor Dutchett.
Yeah, Your Worship, just a question, Director Stang, I guess. When I look at this document, I guess one of the things that I always look for is how well connected we are with other cities and services that are similar to us. And I'm just wondering how much we've explored in terms of the expertise of other cities that have similar structures. And is there anything we can learn from other cities that we've been in contact with that might help us through this?
Thank you, Your Worship, through Councillor Gajek. We have done some preliminary work in reaching out to other municipalities that run their own golf courses, and we have got some feedback onto what types of models are currently out there. What the Facilities Corporation Board is looking to do is a complete review from the foundation of the organization all the way through governance. The Facilities Corporation has gone through many different managers and board structures over the last 7+ years. There is an absolute need for an operational review to look at how do we build an operating model that is sustainable for the long term? How do we build a model that's going to be feasibly economic for the city and its residents, and to look at how we move that corporation and the components, particularly from a curling perspective, how the restaurants operated and the curling or the golf side of that, to make sure that we're putting that in place. The board feels, and myself as an administration feel, that a third-party review of this will be substantial in making those changes as we move forward and getting that third-party review and objective through that process. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it kind of does. I guess, the other thing I was wondering about is how many other cities have the kind of combination of golf and curling that we do, which poses its own challenges, particularly on the physical nature of the building, where, the restaurant's intended to service the curling, which you have to go up the stairs to get access to, and it actually serves, I think, as a barrier for people that are wanting to get perhaps a coffee or whatever it is they do while they're playing. There is a journey and a hike, and there are time pieces in there. I guess, David Irvine said, if you want to make little changes, you change the way you do things. If you want to make big changes, change the way you see things. And I think, that's in part what we need to do, is to see this organization, how it needs to look different as opposed to changing some of the little pieces. And I think that's important in this process here. The only other thing is what are you going to give up in your budget to find $50,000?
Thank you, Your Worship, through Councillor Gajek. Nothing will be given up. We'll be looking for operating efficiencies through numerous departments, in particular community services. We'll be looking at operational efficiencies where we can reallocate some operating funding from those operations into filling the budget need for this operational review.
I guess the danger in that is that, I thought we've gone through a process where we're really tightening the belt, and now I'm hearing we have a surplus or efficiencies we can gain. So I think there's a bit of a challenge in the mixed message when we share that we'll find money internally after we've tightened our belt, and so it creates perhaps a perception that we haven't tightened our belt hard enough. So I'm not sure I understand. Does that make sense?
I believe you're correct, but I think that this is actually this is still 2017.
Oh, the 2017 budget.
17 current operating budget that we're in today, so
Okay,
we've still got a little bit of time, a couple weeks left.
so this will be a carry forward then into 2018 then? Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, I was just
Essentially, it's
still thinking 2018 budget. Gotcha.
Operating surplus
Yeah.
is what's going to come.
Yeah, I was gonna add that I read the 2013 report on it and on facilities, and really there was, I didn't see much in terms of changing how it should be governed or operated or done differently at all. I mean, there were certainly a lot of examples in the report that talked about, I think we chatted etiquette about, service and other pieces in there, but I didn't hear anything about the structure and general operating that would change, because in fact, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot in there on the curling component of that organization. So in my mind, everything we heard is the golf is the one that's making money, curling is the one that's holding us back, and so, yeah.
And I think that, was there any other comments? I certainly think that, we've had some interesting discussions in this chamber in the last month and a half regarding the Lord Golf and Curling Center. And I think this is the opportunity to, there's some other materials coming forward within the administration very shortly, through some of the work that was started earlier this year. But we'll have a much better grasp of what we're up against here at the Floyd Golf and Curling Club. And I think a third set of eyes from outside, and I say truly from the outside, that looks at it from a business, looks at it from the operational side, looks at it from the governance side. What can we do differently to ensure that the facility, as we discussed, may not make a profit overall, but at the end of the day, what can we provide to our citizens that's most cost effective? I think that's really what we want to drive to, and that's what I'm hearing from the board of directors and administration of the city. This is where we want to get to. I appreciate that, I really do, because I think at the end of the day, when we gather all this up and have a presentation to the community, they'll fully understand. We understand all the cost drivers, all the factors that affect it, all the pieces of some history, and we can explain a bit more to the taxpayers as to why we're in the condition we're in. And this is the story. And I think this is what proved two iterations over this past from becoming the corporation prior and then the corporation. So I'm fully supportive of this because we've got to get to the bottom of things, and sometimes we have to pull it back and take a hard look at it. Councilor Torres?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, just to speak on this item, I'm in favor of doing this, and there's two really good reasons that we've just experienced in the last month that kind of point us in this direction. One was the Facilities Corp asking for an operating loan to get through the remainder of the year. And two, the fact that their third-party ask, although it's kind of a different third-party ask, was higher, almost double from what it is normally. The point is, there's something broken, there's something that's not working right, and we have to figure it out what it is, and we kind of need that unbiased third party to point us in the right direction so that we don't make this a regular thing. Thank you.
Your Worship, if I could just add two more points to that. We want to have this review done in a fairly short time frame, which is why we're bringing it forward today. We want to have this completed by February, middle of March, to help through the golf season, and maybe some of those changes can be implemented through 2018. And secondly, I just want to put a shout out to our facility manager and director for recreation and culture. This isn't reflective of the operations of those current staff currently in place. This is some things that we need to look at that we've inherited over the last 7 years, and we want to get to the bottom of how to move that corporation forward and what all makes the most sense for the city.
Absolutely. Well taken. Councilor Baker?
Excuse me, Your Worship. There's something in this report that just doesn't fit in my mind. Now, starting with the background, we talked about 2010 operational overview of the Lloydminster Communiplex was conducted. The review discussed the structure and operation of the Communiplex and how it was affecting operations. I'm not sure what that means. The recommendation of 2010 review was to dissolve the board of directors of the Golf and Country Club. Well, in 2009, there was no board of directors. The Facility Corporation, I don't know when it was formed, but you never had a board of directors until sometime late 2010 or 2011. There was an advisory board for 20 years that sat on that committee. So I don't know who did the overview of operations in 2010, and I don't know who the board of directors were, because I don't think they existed.
Thank you, Your Worship, through Councilor Baker. There may be some, maybe wording technicalities in there. From my understanding and my research,
Yeah, that's fair.
the city took over from a board, advisory board or whatever. It was a private country club prior to the city taking it over in 2010, in which that report was what the current board for the Facilities Corporation was born out of. When I reviewed the document from 2010, there isn't, and I've shared it with everybody around this table, there isn't an author on that report. I'm not sure who put the report together or whatever. The recommendation out of that was that the city take over operations and create a facilities corporation, which was directed by a board. That's what we were trying to iterate in the admin report. So there may be some technicalities on what it was called prior to 2010. I could be corrected on that.
But we're saying there was a board of directors in 2010?
Well, there was something prior to council, remember?
Well, there's an advisory
Yeah,
committee for the day it started.
yeah, basically, and as executive manager standing.
And an advisory board is quite different than a board of
From the
directors.
board of directors, yeah.
And I can tell you how it worked, because I sat on that board at one time. The board of directors were volunteers, and they worked with the facilities manager, Mrs. Ann Townsend for years, and maybe others, but for the most part, and worked with the whole complex. And they would meet, and we had a city rep on the board, if you want to call it the board or advisory committee, and they would make suggestions back to council or through to the Parks and Rec director of the day or whoever at that time. And then council would come back with their yay or nays or whatever for the bigger items. I mean, the small stuff, they didn't worry. But I was just confused when we were talking board of director in 2010. Then in 2013, we had a review and that didn't go anywhere. And I guess at the end of the day, we really didn't spend much money on that report, or a little bit maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have the total
Okay,
on that report.
but there's no report, really.
Yeah, and just to back up, I agree with you, you're 100% correct. It probably wasn't advisory. In 2010 is when the Facilities Corporation was created, and when the Facilities Corporation was created, the current board, as it sits today, was developed. That was in 2010, by my understanding of all the documents I have. So is that
Yeah, okay, I was just trying to get my head around it.
Yeah. So, as executive manager Stang pointed out, the 2010 report that was provided is unauthored. There's no indication of who carried out that review whatsoever. It's a review, but without some understanding of who did it, I found it very hard to put it into perspective, because was it done internally, was it done externally? In 2013, it was, a report was started, and it was...
If I may, Your Worship, if it was incorporated in 2010, and then reviewed it in 2010, and the recommendation was to get rid of it.
Oh, I think it's the order the other way, Counselor, from what I understand. So in 2010, it started out as what they're referred to as the Lloyd Golf and Country Club. And somewhere in 2010, there was that report done, but again, there's no date to it exactly, other than the first of 2010. Then the council of the day went into the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation. So,
I guess, Your Worship, the bottom line on this place has been bouncing around for 20, 25 years. There's no question. It goes here, and it goes there, and it goes here, and it goes there. And I'm one member of council that strongly believe that it should be managed by the city. I mean, the final say is, because although we report to the taxpayer, and if the operation up there needs some subsidy or capital, we have to approve it. I still believe you can have good volunteers that will volunteer on an advisory board like we have on the theater and other things that make recommendations to the team leader that's looking after that facility and operate that, but it just keeps going round and round and round this thing. And for those that sat on the board, I'm sure they'll be happy to get something done with it. I would think.
I'm thinking so too, Councillor. Councillor Phelan.
Yeah, I've seen it bounce around and around, there's no question about it. I thought senior administration was getting close, they had some good ideas there. Personally, I think, spending 50,000 on it, I mean, the problem seems fairly obvious. The one that slaps you is on the curling side of things. And, personally, I just don't see spending $50,000. It may be something that could be solved within, besides before going to a third party. Because you had some great ideas as far as on some cost cuttings, and to deal more certainly with the curling club to see if they have any solutions. I know I've spoken to some of them, and they want the services, but do they have any solutions that we might have to? So.
Any other comments?
Your survey, I guess, just maybe to unpack it a bit more, I guess, and I think Dr. Stein talked a bit about it, is that a governance and operational model, and so that's a part where I guess I'm wondering how that might look different if the city ultimately still operates it, and ideas you might have around what that governance or board or structure, whatever it might look.
Thank you, Your Worship, through Councillor Diachak and Councillor Pagnon. Excuse me. I had a thought in my mind and I just lost it. In regards to your question, Councillor Pagnon, yes, the corporation or the board, the current board and administration have talked about a lot of different opportunities to make changes. We've looked at other facilities in other municipalities and how they do business. For the board's perspective, we're looking to get extremely deep down to the foundation to really evaluate how that facility is operated, what some of the opportunities are for changing our governance and how the facility is operated. The recommendation that may come out of that would be to bring it fully internal and dissolve the corporation. It may be to keep the corporation. So we can have different types of ideas. What we're looking for is that third party to come in and really help substantiate those decisions and those thoughts and help provide us with some direction on what makes the most sense for the corporation. And then Councillor Diachak, if you could repeat your
Kind of
question.
answer part of it.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Not seeing any, I'll ask the council for direction. Councillor
I
Crowell.
move that council approve the funding request from the Lloydminster Facilities Corporation to expense up to a maximum of $50,000 to conduct a full operational review of the corporation.
Seconder, Councillor Monroe. Any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Councillor Baker.
Well, Your Worship, I'm not sure how many facilities have what we have up there, golf course, curling rink, restaurant. But I hope we get somebody that's dealt with the multifaceted sportsplex rather than just somebody zeroed in on golf or this. I'm sure you'll do that. I had to say it because I don't know who else operates like that. I wouldn't know, but I'm sure you do.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Councillor Baker, we have reached out to people we know in the industry who have provided recommendation of certain firms that they feel would be very suitable in fulfilling the obligations we're looking for in this review. So we feel that the two we will go out to invite on are very well suited to fulfill the scope of work.
Councillor Monroe.
I do sit on this board, and we have had a lot of great ideas come forth through Joelle, but the fact of the matter is that we're also dealing with a Crown Corporation. So if we have this study in place that is able to roll that out for us and what the best benefits are, it's a lot easier to negotiate with them or what that looks like if we have this study in place versus just saying this is how it's going to be. Well, then they're going to find us back and they'll determine whether or not we should just take on curling as a city or not take on the curling or what it's going to look like without just a single-handed person making that decision. So from a board's point of view, I guess I see it as good.
No further comments? Questions? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, moving on to the agenda. Item number 8.5 is operations. Anything to report from operations that's not noted? Nothing on operations, okay. 8.6, chief of staff. All good. Moving on to 8.7. We have bylaws. Up to the city manager, the city clerk, I imagine, or who's leading this? CFO?
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I would invite Mr. Brady to come and walk us through the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. The bylaw we're bringing forward today is the supplementary assessment for improvement bylaw. The recommendation is the council grant bylaw number 26-2017, supplementary improvement bylaw first reading. The issues council needs to annually authorize supplementary assessments. Some background in order to impose the tax on properties that have substantially completed or construction during the year, which were not fully captured in our regular levy. Council needs to pass the supplementary assessment bylaw, section 261 of the Lloydminster Charter states the council must annually pass an supplementary assessment bylaw authorizing supplementary assessment be prepared for the purpose of imposing tax in that year. The options for council grant bylaw number 26-2017, the supplementary assessment improvement bylaw first reading. This will allow supplementary assessments in 2018. Option 2 is council send bylaw number 26-2017 back to administration with more information. This will allow council to seek further clarification. Or option 3 is council does not grant bylaw number 26-2017 first reading. This will not allow for supplementary assessments in 2018. If there's any questions, I can answer them for you.
Councilor Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to be clear on the specific bylaw, so if a builder, let's say July 1st, had a bare lot and they were really keen and they got a house complete by December 31st, the point is so that you have the valuation of a completed house rather than a bare lot?
Yeah, it's mostly correct. It's basically the province legislates certain base dates. So when we're doing an assessment, base dates are always July 1st of the previous year. So for 2018, our market value data is for July 1st, 2017. There's also a second date, which is called the condition date, which is December 31st of the prior year. So December 31st of 2017, whatever the condition of the building is like at that time, is what we will do an assessment on. So what this bylaw will allow us to do is if somebody completes a property in 2018, we'll be able to go back and tax those properties. That's all in the interest of being equitable and fair to all tax rate players.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I see on the bottom list other bylaws, 2015, 16, 17, some are adopted. So this hasn't changed at all?
No,
Okay.
that's correct. It's just something council has a right now to charter supplementary assessments. Most do, because obviously it's to try to make sure we're treating all taxpayers the same.
Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. I'll look for direction. Councilor Batchor.
Council grant bylaw 26-2017 supplementary assessment for improvements bylaw, first reading.
Seconder, Councilor Dorsey. Any further questions, discussion before I call for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to bylaw 872. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. In regards to the operating line of credit bylaw authority, the recommendation is that council grant bylaw number 27-2017, the operating line of credit bylaw first reading. The issue, this line of credit will be used when necessary to facilitate any shortfalls for operating and capital projects. The Lloydminster Charter operating expenditures section 199.1, also referenced on page 106, states that this section applies to a borrowing made for the purpose of financing operating expenditures. 2, the amount to be borrowed, together with the unpaid principal of other borrowings made for the purpose of financing operating expenditures, must not exceed the amount the city estimates will be raised in taxes in the year the borrowing is made. Revolving credit facility is commonly used by many facilities. Temporary borrowing is outside of the debt management policy, which deals with long-term debt. The credit facility is reported separately from the debit line calculation as defined by Alberta provincial legislation. The terms and interest rates of the revolving credit facility are disclosed annually in the audited financial statements. In December 2012, Council authorized the city clerk to prepare a bylaw for an operating line of credit in the amount of $12,500,000. The city utilized the line of credit in 2014 to offset the now discontinued discount on prepayment of property taxes, with the cost of borrowing of $2,205.78. The city did not access these funds in 2013, 2015, 2016, or 2017. Options for council. A council grant bylaw number 27-2017, the operating line of credit bylaw first reading. This will allow administration to access the line of credit in the event of any financial shortfalls. Option 2, the council instruct the city clerk to amend bylaw number 27-2017, the operating line of credit for an amount less than $12,500,000. $12,500,000 is the maximum line of credit established to Scotiabank. 3, the council instruct the city clerk to provide additional information and bring bylaw number 27-2017 back to a future GPC or council meeting for further discussion. Concerning governance implications, a new bylaw for the operating line of credit must be established annually. The bylaw from the previous year must also be repealed. In terms of budget implications, administration would only use the operating line of credit if necessary to meet short-term cash flow needs. Any amount borrowed would need to be repaid by the end of the year with interest. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO. I believe we did this last year, the first time, kind of scared me, and I know there was some confusion in the community. Are we borrowing money to run the city? And as we alluded to, no, we do not borrow money to run the city, but in the case of simply between the time we gather taxes on an annual basis, the end of June, to operating a city over a 12-month period. It's only one harvest, as they say on the farm, there's 12 months of paying bills. So very direct. Any questions or comments for the CFO? Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just more to put your point there, Gerald, is in an event where you ever need an operating line of credit, it has to be passed by bylaw beforehand. So we would be in a sticky situation having to have emergency meetings, passing bylaws, having waiting periods, second and third bylaws, or all at once if that's what you were into. And yeah, we don't want to do that. So it's prudent to at least just have the bylaws signed off. Thanks.
Any other comments, Council? If not, I'll look for direction. Councilor Fagan.
I recommend the council grant bylaw 27-217, the operating line of credit bylaw first reading.
Seconder, Councilor Buckingham. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're moving back to the agenda to 8.7.3. City Manager. City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The item before you is the bylaw 28-2017. It's, if council recalls, on the December 4th meeting, they approved the landfill use bylaw, or the landfill use fees. They must be contained in the bylaw. This is the bylaw that they will be contained in. They are presented as they were on the 4th, and this is for its first reading.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any comments or questions regarding the proposed? Councilor Baker.
I'd just like to make a comment on the landfill bylaws, if I may, Your Worship.
Certainly.
We've had, certainly I have, and I think maybe other council members have had some pushback from the construction industry on what we call dirty fill and the cost that to dump a load of fill in the land, in our landfill, if that's no pun intended. And it's very expensive. And we have some situations, I know Councillor Dychuk and I have experienced it. And I grew up in the industry and lived my whole life in the industry. And it's appalling, the fee that we charge if you have some clay dirt mix. And for many years, the city management wanted that material to cover the landfill in the future. Part of the landfill cost down the road, and it was a lot of money, $1 million or who knows, it was a lot of money. And now the fees are, if you bring a semi-load of fill out there, if you want to build a garage in your backyard, you could pay $1,500, $2,000 to dump a load of dirt. And I think we have to find an alternate way. If we can't put it in our landfill, there might be some other way to dispose of it. But those costs are atrocious. And I'm sure in your reports you've done the research all over the place, but I'm just asking that we can come back and deal with that issue somewhere in the near future, if that's in order.
I think it is, Councillor. If I can speak to it first, Councillor. I'm not familiar directly with the case, but I've gathered some information around that, and there's a couple thoughts. Yes, there is going to be a communication go out, and I think that the communication I understand that needs to go out is a contractor wants to dig a particular item and remove the topsoil and clay. Our landfill will charge you, well, I believe there's no charge for cover for that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, and this is the but, if the contractor feels he doesn't want to make another trip back with the concrete from the curb or from the adjacent old job or anything like that, then they will have to pay the price, because that's the separation fee that for our folks to have to go through and sort that through. So the understanding I have is, and after talking to administration about this particular item, not talking to it directly, is that if it's clean fill, from a residential, there's no charge. Now, so if there's even a bit of concrete sticking out, so what it really means is the contractors or the individual residents have to make a second trip to a landfill and say, I got concrete now. Then that would be charged accordingly rather than the whole tonnage of that. That's the challenge we've kind of got, because the problem is once it's deemed a mixed load, that's where that category goes. So I think that it's an educational piece, and I believe there was some discussion during the budget process from the landfill operations through to communications. How are we going to get this back out to people? Because the more we can do to improve our landfill, the cheaper it is going to be in the long term to run. And as well, direct and indirect costs, because those people pay taxes to start with, plus they're going to pay those dumping fees. So somehow that communication is key. And it doesn't matter if it's back through to the industrial side, to the commercial, and to the construction industry. We need to make sure they get that message very clearly. If you bring us clean topsoil or clean clay, then it can go as covered.
Your Worship, you got the wrong product.
Okay?
Clay and topsoil are not the issue. You want to build a garage in your backyard, a freestanding garage. You scrape off the topsoil and some clay. And there's no concrete in it because there is no concrete there. If concrete's in it, it's a totally different world. That's all covered in the bylaw. It's just clay, sod, mix. When you go in there with a B-train full of that stuff, and you put a camera on top of that load, you don't know what's in that load. I turned bills in to former city manager Rick McDonald. I gave him copies of invoices. And I believe you might have seen those.
Yeah, I didn't see the bill.
And I went and looked at one site, and there was nothing there. It was just a backyard. Yeah, you got some tree roots, and what do you got in your backyard after 30 years? I'm just saying, you're building an $8,000 or $10,000 garage, and it costs you $2,000 to haul a bit of skim off the top, and $8,000 to haul an old basement load.
Yep.
So I think if we're not going to accept fill to landfill as the way it is, we got to look at a different solution. Because we talk about affordability, and I'll tell you, I was in the construction business a long time. That's a lot of money for a truckload of fill to get rid of it. And I just say that I wish we would look into that. That's all I'm asking.
Councillor.
I think the other thing is, although I guess, if we're talking about the same example you and I talked about, there was a bit of concrete in that mix as well when he hauled up, because he was renovating and putting a new garage pad in. And so when we had Karen speak here, I asked the question about that. And the issue was, if it's, the concrete's by itself, it can constitute clean concrete, it goes in the pile. If it's clean dirt, clay, whatever it is, even the sod, that goes in another pile because they can use the dirt, compact it. If it's in fact mixed, then they can't use it to compact. So what happens, it gets treated as if it's regular fill. And if you're hauling that fill, then it's the same fee because it's filling up your cell, your landfill unit. But if it's not usable to put on the side, then, that's the risk of doing the cost. And I think that's why His Worship's talking about the clean, because if you look at clean concrete, clean asphalt, there's no charge for it. The unrecyclable concrete, I don't know whether has rebar or whatever else, and I have no idea. That's beyond my understanding of it. But that was the point I think Karen made, is that if you have concrete and dirt mixed in, it becomes contaminated, if you like, for lack of a better. And the only place they can put it then is right directly into the landfill, as opposed to a pile where they can use it to compact.
Well, I know how it works.
Yeah, so that was the rationale for the cost. But it wasn't just for sod and clay, sod and dirt. And I think in the example, there was old concrete mixed in with that sod and dirt.
Well,
So that was the piece
we
that
can debate whether it was concrete or not. The contractor said there isn't. I've talked to some of the haulers and they have different opinions. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
something we should look at. I'll give you an example, Your Worship. Where your new operations center is today, there used to be one of the best white goods landfill in Lloydminster, in the bush, just west of the operational center. We started charging $20 to dump fridges and stoves in the landfill. And when they built the new operations center, right in the middle of the bush to the west, there was truckloads of fridges and stoves, and that's what happens to your waste material if you don't take it to landfill.
No,
It ends up in somebody's backyard.
Absolutely.
And the city ended up cleaning all that up, I understand. So, whatever, I'm just asking
No,
that
for
we look
sure.
at that. That's all I'm asking.
And I asked her that question when she's here, but that was the explanation she gave. Ken said,
Okay.
if it's a mixture of concrete and dirt, then it becomes, I don't know, the word was used, contaminated or something, and then there's
Mixed
only
load.
place, pardon me?
Mixed load. I believe.
Mixed load then has to get dumped into the cell. And if you're dumping it into the cell, we know what that costs, and they get dinged for it.
And then, and like I said, I believe there's gonna be some work again around the education, because we just committed to $5.5 million, I think, in landfill over a long period of time here, or actually a short period of time. That everything we can do to lengthen the life of that landfill is in the interest of the taxpayers. And at the end of the day, it all comes back to them, as they know, so.
I just say what's fair is fair.
Yeah. So, Your Worship, the only other question I have around this, I guess, is that we had just a little bit of discussion around a ticketing system. So you could bring 4 loads or whatever, and Karen referenced it when she was here and spoke to it. And I'm not sure if that's, am I missing it, or is it in there or not, or can somebody help me out? So if you're a regular household earner, where is this, right?
Somewhere there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as we talked about it, so that part of the challenge was people who were private entrepreneurs were using their home address and hauling repeated loads once, twice a week when they did their private work. And so one of the suggestions is that you get X number of tickets that you can bring a load. And that would curtail people coming in who are actually doing business and hauling dump, fill into our dump.
So if I understand this correctly, and I'll take a crack at this before I look to administration, is that it was a budgetary item to implement going into 2018, which is in the budget that was just passed,
Okay.
which would result in someone being determined that it's no longer residential after they get to a point, and then they would move to that commercial, that category. So it won't be reflected in the rates. It's a procedure that's going to come into play in 2018, which will then have applicability, but you won't see it in the rates because it'll simply be, the landfill will advise you that you've basically appeared to be a commercial dumpster, and this is the rates you're now being applied to. Is that illustration, I'll look to, is that clarification that I had?
Yeah, that's something that I think we'd have to just verify with the operations team to make sure, but yeah, my first response is it wouldn't be reflected in the rate, it would be a process internally to determine whether you're a commercial contributor to landfill or a residential contributor.
So the only thing, Your Worship, is that in our fee, in section 1, it says garbage residential is no charge. So that's not accurate then?
No.
So there need to be a rider on that stipulating It says it's reevaluated annually, but we should then reference that you'll be allowed 4 trips or whatever it is, free, and then you pay a fee. That was kind of an understanding around that. So if we're going to do that, then we have to come back and address this.
Look, this is clear.
If I could suggest that for the second and third reading, we'll bring our operations teams back and they can explain clearly to council what the information is seeking.
Yeah, I think that would be, I agree with that 100%. Get the right answer from the right people. Councilor Baker.
Your worship, the part 2 is, when we talked about landfill fees, whether we're running a regional landfill or not, that was a question. And I think the administration said, no, we're not. But we do take garbage from outside the city. And a lot of the charges in the schedule are the same for in-town and out-of-town. And
If you look at, so maybe I'm looking at this wrong too, Councilor, but I think that in case of,
especially for 19,
they're the same, did you say? I think that you should see a difference in, as an example, unrecycled, unrecyclable concrete. True, there's, that one is the same. Doesn't matter if you're in town or out of town.
There's one that's less.
Is there?
If you want to throw a mattress out when you're from out of town, you're going to save $5 from the local.
As a matter of fact, yeah, very good point.
Sure, it's a typo.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing needs a little review. Don't know.
Okay, that's some good points there.
So should we follow the city clerk's recommendation and pass it?
We could pass the first reading, which is the first reading, and we could send some things back to administration to fine tune some things. But I think that's acceptable, because that's why it's the first reading. Councilor
My
Buck?
biggest beef is the same price.
No, I understand, and I think the message got through very clearly. It was a very good catch, Councilor. That's why we've got you here. Councilor Buck?
Just thank you, Worship, just a point of clarification, I just wonder if we're catching things like that, savings for, we were just pointed out, is granting this first reading knowing that it's going to change a viable option? Is that the process that actually goes ahead, or do we not grant it first reading because we know that these changes are coming? And I'm asking that I don't know.
Not to say that.
The council has an option of not providing the first reading and the bylaw comes back. By passing the first reading, the bylaw can not receive a second or third reading, which would, after a year, make it a defunct bylaw. So by directing the administration to bring back changes, if council is not satisfied with the changes, they don't have to provide a second or third reading.
That's your question, Councilor. All right. I'll look to council for direction on 8.7.3. Councilor Batchor.
The council grant bylaw 28-2017 and amend the landfill use bylaw, first reading.
Seconder, Councilor Thorson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I think administration, I can safely say, has got some direction from council for that next second and third.
Sorry, Don.
Well, that's a good catch, Councilor. That's a great catch.
Welcome to the city.
Yeah, we could. So, I'm just, would council entertain a quick recess before 2 o'clock by hearing? Bylaw?
So recess at 2 o'clock.
Seconder? Councilor Monroe, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. You're adjourned for 5 minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 2 o'clock has arrived. At this time, I would like to discuss bylaw 25-2017, land use bylaw amendment. To the open portion of the meeting, I would like to note before we begin that during a public hearing, we ask that you respect the views of everyone here and allow each person their time to speak without interruption. Each person wishing to speak has up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. If you wish to speak, please state your name for the record and whether you are in support or opposed to the proposed bylaw. When you are finished speaking, please remain at the front as council may wish to ask you questions. All discussions of council members, city staff, and delegations shall be directed to the chairperson. Any questions brought forward by the public that should not be able to be addressed during this meeting will be done so at the next council meeting. Council will not debate this matter during the hearing, and the decision regarding whether or not to grant the bylaw further readings will be dealt with following the public hearing. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 25-2017, land use bylaw amendment, open at 2:06 p.m. I would ask the city clerk to confirm whether or not this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation.
I confirm that this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with applicable legislation. This public hearing was advertised in the Meridian Booster on November 22nd and advertised in the Source on November 30th.
I would ask the city clerk to summarize the purpose of this hearing.
The purpose of this public hearing is for bylaw 25-2017, being a land use bylaw amendment.
I would now call upon anyone wishing to speak on the proposed bylaw.
For those of us that don't know the bylaw itself, excuse me for not standing. I have a broken back and a couple of injured legs. Are you going to read the bylaw for those that don't know it?
We usually don't, but I believe in this case, the bylaw that's being discussed right now for the members in the council chamber and those joining us online is the
I mean,
bylaw.
I can find out later, but if I may speak sitting down, I found it very interesting at 11 o'clock this morning on the CBC News, the feds and the provincials were arguing about how much money each of them are going to get out of the excise tax, and it was going to be 50%. However, at noon they said they had another meeting, and the province is going to get 73%, and the feds are going to get 30%. Now, isn't that interesting and typical politics? Instead of talking about the use and the abuse and the misuse of marijuana, that now they're fighting over this money. Now, what is more important?
I appreciate your point. I'm sure I truly appreciate your point. But the purpose of today's public hearing is simply to discuss the land use bylaw that we are proposing in the city council. Now, one of the challenges that we have, as you can appreciate, is federal and provincial legislation trumps what we do. You're not using that supersedes, I guess would be the better word. Thank you for that correction. So the discussion you have and very valid points on those discussion points are not the discussion point of today, I'm afraid, though. And this would be not the right avenue to have that or right location, where this hearing is simply to discuss the hearing. And I think it would help then to discuss what the bylaw is, just for everyone's information that are present. That there's a bylaw to the proactive measure to put a moratorium regarding non-medical cannabis-related developments in place and regarding our city. So simply all we can deal with today is that bylaw regarding putting a moratorium on any further action as prescribed in the bylaw. That's what's up for discussion. So I would ask if anyone else wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw and come forward to the mic. Not seeing any, I would like to thank all presenters for their comments. Council will take your comments into consideration when deciding on this matter. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 25-2017 land use bylaw amendment closed at 2:09 p.m. That brings us back to 7.2 on the agenda after the public hearing for this bylaw, second and third readings of the bylaw. Up to city administration. To the city manager, to the city clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. This item was brought forward and has received its first reading. This is for its second and third reading. This is for a moratorium on non-medical related cannabis. And it does have an automatic repeal clause built into it 6 months from the date of the issuance of the bylaw.
Thank you, city clerk. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think thanks, City Clerk, for bringing the 6-month repeal up. I think it's probably worth noting that this isn't saying that the city council is for or against anything that has anything to do with cannabis. This council is basically, in my opinion, this bylaw is simply, we don't know what the federal or provincial governments are going to do yet on legalization, on bylaws that they're going to enact. So until we know what we're allowed to do within the provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan, this bylaw is simply to say that we're not doing anything until we know what we can and can't do. That's it. I just think it's worth clarifying that point.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's exactly right. We are waiting for both the provincial and federal governments to resolve the issues around this matter, waiting for them to, and again, the act in particular will not come into federal jurisdiction until July 1st, I understand it, 2018 for cannabis. And until that happens, we're still really waiting patiently to find out what the government has firmly entrenched so that we can move forward on that. Councillor Corson.
And thank you, Your Worship. To my benefit, because it's been a little while since we looked at this one. As I understood, this is really putting a stop on anything that's going to be happening for the meantime, so we can see the laws, as Councillor Buckingham suggested, and so that we can make sure that one way or another, no one can get grandfathered into one of these types of businesses, sneaking in until we have our ducks in a row as far as where we want things and where we think the applicable land uses that work for this council and work well for the public are. That's my understanding of generally what the purpose is. So just make sure that, no one can sneak in across the line one way or another and get grandfathered in and have one, I don't know, next to an elementary school or something like that. Which, yes, you could debate whether that's a good or bad thing, but regardless, it just gives us the opportunity to stop it so we can control it in an orderly fashion. Thanks. That's my understanding. Confirm if I'm correct.
You are correct, Councillor.
Yeah, Your Worship, just if I could add, I think again, it's the same thing in terms of even the kind of restrictions we put on the operation of liquor stores within our city in terms of easements, setbacks, those kind of things. We want to do the same thing to ensure that ultimately they're placed in an area where we feel they're going to ensure the safest environment for our youth and those that are underage, if you like, and limit their exposure as much as possible in that regard. The only other issue, I guess, that I look at this bylaw is that there's some talk that the Senate may actually delay the implementation or passing of this bill. And so we have in here that this bylaw will expire 6 months after its inception, assuming the government will pass it on July 1st, 2018. So I'm just wondering whether it's worth adding there or upon the legalization date of cannabis use in Canada as an or, just as a backdoor clause, because we can leave ourselves exposed for a month or 2 months. And if we're comfortable doing that and coming back, if the date moves, then we can always come back and modify it. But if we build it in, so it's very clear, crystal clear, that it's really tied to, that date that the federal government will say it's legal to do so, and this bylaw aligns itself with that. So it's just a thought.
Well, it's a great thought. I look to the city clerk for some input on that very question.
I would suggest, if I could, to council, that should there be a delay, we could bring forward an amendment to the bylaw that simply says that.
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure we're on it so that we don't sort of forget about it. And certainly I think in the past we had one business that snuck in between a gap of one policy and another, and we're left not being where we want to be. So
absolutely. I think that direction from council would be to administration that let's ensure that this be revisited, be it 3 or 4 months into it, and leave ourselves enough time to make sure that we have a review based on activities of the federal and provincial government. Because once again, their actions will lead to a reaction on our part. Councilor Baker.
Your worship, that only got one concern with this. We've got a 6-month window in there, I think. I don't think there should be any window there until such times as the, deal with it after the governments make their decision. If it takes them a year, then it takes them a year. I don't think 6 months should be in there.
So, Councillor, I think that the intention was based on, up till today, and I'll use up till today, is we were working on the assumption, based on the information provided that July 1st, 2018, there would be an act in Parliament. Based on some of the activities of today, even, tell us it may not. But by giving us 6 months, we've got a time frame that we can work with and extend out and go from there. This way, the intention was that this clause, if the legislation came forward, this bylaw would be in place, was the intention. Just, in essence, allow that we wouldn't have to come back to repeal the bylaw, whereas now we have the bylaw, if it's approved, so after second, third reading, we will be able to do an amendment to carry this forward. So I think that from the perspective, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Do we say until when? And that we put an end date on it, or do we put a bylaw in place without an end date? And from that perspective, it's one or a little bit of both, if I've got this where you're at.
Well, Your worship, the only thing I'm concerned about, if someone walks into the planning office on June the 1st, and this expires on June 11th or whatever, and they want a permit, what are the rules? We have one in place. We may not have it in place. This doesn't kick in until July, I believe, the actual sale. So is it premature? That's all I'm...
So, Councillor, the intention of this bylaw is to provide administration opportunity to adjust our local legislation once we get that information from the provinces and, of course, the federal government.
If they don't get that till June...
If they don't bring that forward and we don't feel that it'll be brought
Okay.
forward in a timely fashion, then we will do an amendment to the bylaw to ensure that there is no lapse.
Yeah, Your worship, I just I think there's a phenomenal pressure on the government at the federal and provincial level, because those people in this industry would like to have their doors open on July 1st. And that means they want to have the property purchased now, knowing where to set up their shop and the distribution and all those other pieces. So for them, I think the amount of pressure they're putting on the feds as well as the province, I don't think it's going to take longer than July 1. But certainly it will depend on how it operates in the Senate. But I mean, there are announcements being made in various provinces. I think there was one yesterday, day before yesterday, where one of the eastern provinces was simply going to distribute cannabis to liquor stores. That was going to be the venue. There it is done. So all the easements would be the same. All rules that apply for distribution of alcohol would be applied for, liquor and marijuana. Pardon me. So there's some shortcuts that some provinces are taking around this. And we may or may not want to do the same thing, but it will be dependent upon the province, by and large, that will decide. When we see the difference on age limits currently for Alberta and Saskatchewan, and we very well could have different sets of rules around, where the store is located with setbacks, if you like, in both provinces, which will cause us another set of, I guess, head scratching moments.
We just got to make sure we've got time to get it right.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is, that's all I have.
Yeah, no, I agree with the councillor, and I think that's very clear. The direction the administration has is that this is not going to be one of those that gets missed in the lapse.
For those who went through the alcohol liquor stores, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that very clearly understood. Any other questions or comments before I look for council for direction? With that, I'll look to council. You ready?
No.
You're not ready? Council Batcher.
Council grant bylaw 25-2017 being a bylaw that's a proactive measure to put a moratorium regarding non-medical cannabis-related developments in place, second reading.
We have a seconder. Council Torson. Any further questions or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Look to council for direction. Council Batcher.
Council grant bylaw 25-2017 being a bylaw that's a proactive measure to put a moratorium regarding non-medical cannabis-related developments in place, third reading.
Seconder, Councilor Thorson. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Returning back to the agenda, item number 9, I believe is where we were at before we went into the public hearing. Correspondence and information items, anything? Okay. Moving on to item number 10, Mayor and Council reports. Certainly, Council, I realize this will be our last opportunity to gather before the Christmas break. And people will be joining their families and friends for celebrations. I'd like to personally extend a very Merry Christmas to each one of you and to the members of administration in our city. It's been an opportunity. It's been a very busy year, 2017, as I reflect back a little bit, but a very great year. And certainly it helped move our council forward. We've had a lot of changes in administration, and we've set some new direction from our side. They responded very well and rose up to the requests that we've made. And thank you for a great 2017. Well done to the administration. From a mayor's perspective, it's certainly been busy with some public invitations, but I remind everyone to please don't drink and drive. I suspect that the RCMP and our peace officers will be doing their annual blitz very soon to ensure that people are out and about being checked on. So please don't take that risk. It's not worth anyone's driver's license, let alone someone's life. And it's, saying it from this perspective, I think it's important that we continue to support that notion that there's, and it's not a notion, it's simply where we want to be. It supports Vision Zero and all the things that make our city a safer place. Any councillors have any comments to finish off the last meeting of 2017 they'd like to add? Councillor Baker.
Your Worship, I'm not sure if you're on 10 or 11.
10.
Okay.
I was going to say, Worship, the same, and certainly it's been a terrific year, and I'm extremely happy and pleased with where we are today from where we were a year ago. We have a new city manager, a new vice chair, we have Roger here, and Mike is here as well, and so I mean, and we've just gone through this budgeting process, and I think the amount of work that's got into it and due diligence. We should go home, and I'm betting there'll be something in our stocking. Hopefully it's not cold for all the hard work, and I wish each and every one of you well.
Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Just an observation that I think I wanted to share with everybody about this community, and in December in particular, as we get into this time of year. There's been multiple events held in our downtown. Saturday, the Christmas convoy that happened on Friday, they put in $20,000 into the food bank for one afternoon of work. Roller Splash, the things that I'm seeing on social media of just people being great people and actually, representing our city well, helping that person out. My family wants to do this for someone for Christmas. You have some families you want to help out. You let us know. And just for me, I've always kind of paid attention to it, but as a city councilor, I pay closer attention to it, and it does really speak to the beauty and the generosity of this community. So seeing all these stories makes my Christmas. It really does. So thank you to everybody in the community for being you, because it does impact a lot of people. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Well said, Councillor Baker.
Well, thank you, Worship. There was an article this weekend, or this week, out of the Edmonton about the, whatever you call it, extreme fighting or martial arts or kill yourself or whatever you want to call it. And it just builds on what we were talking about in bylaw, whatever it was, about the need to ban that kind of activity and let the province handle it. As you read in the article, and I know Councillor Wagner had sent out a little blip on the computer there, and I saw it on the news where they had an in-camera session, and after the in-camera report, they got out of that business pretty quick. So that should be a heads up for all of us, whatever it said in the Edmonton report. And they banned for at least a year. That's, what do you call it? Sport?
Combative sports.
Pardon me?
Combative sports, I believe.
It's pretty common. But I think that's something to think about. I just wanted to mention that because I guess I've said it before, I was against it the last time and I'm still against it. because somebody's gonna get hurt badly, and we shouldn't be putting the city at risk for that kind of thing, in my opinion. The other thing was, it's the end of the year, and I want to thank each and every one of, everybody in this room for what a pleasure it's been the last 10 or 12 months, or, well, a year now, a year since we got together, and how diligent everybody's been working, and we're so glad to have the new staff up and running and focused on hopefully all the right things for our community. And I just find it a pleasure to be here because it's productive, it's thoughtful, and it seems very caring. And I think that's important. And I use the word caring. It's not about how you and I feel. It's about how our community feels about what we're doing. And for the most part, I think we've got some people that are following us. You'll always have a few naysayers, but Dion and his team now, we've got it together, and I'm looking forward to good years ahead for the city. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? All right, moving on to item 11. Any other matters for this council to discuss at this time? Not seeing any, I'm going to look to inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, there are media requests for yourself, Mayor Albers, as well as Councilors Diachuk and Torsten.
Thank you. This time I'll look for the recess before we go to camera. Councilor Diachuk, seconder. Councilor Monroe, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.